I want to thank County Executive Jan Gardner and the County Council for their work. But as you work with them, an awareness of what they're receiving from the federal government for certain expenditures that they might otherwise pay for. So Frederick County Public Schools received $16.8 million as part of the December legislation. Frederick Community College received $4.1 million. Hood College received $1.9 million, and Mount St. Mary's received 1.7. So both the community colleges and four-year institutions in Frederick County received that assistance. Another important provision that was in the December bill that was not part of the original CARES Act has to do with rental assistance. I think we're all very worried about what will happen when the emergency eviction moratoriums that come to an end, whenever that may be, that a lot of people will face a tsunami of rent payments, balloon payments that they may be unable to pay. So the December bill also included rental assistance. And this is money that does come directly to Frederick County. This does not get siphoned, through the state of Maryland. And it will be around $2.6 million. In fact, I think the county may have just received its allocation, and I think it's in that range. But just so you're aware of, that's the rental assistance money. And the way it works is that the county would establish a program. Those funds would go directly to the landlord for payments on behalf of the tenant. So that's some of the provisions. Now, I want to talk briefly about vaccine distribution, because this is obviously top of mind for all of us. And the bill that we passed in December also provides the state of Maryland $400 million for vaccine distribution and for additional masks, other PPE, tracing, contact tracing costs, and those sort of things. And we look forward to working with you to make sure that we can follow those dollars. I think the state is still in the process of actually, the money is there whenever they submit their application as to how they're going to be using it. Now, with respect to vaccine distribution, there are two big pieces to this, right? One is the national supply. The other is the distribution mechanisms within the state and county. In terms of the national supply, the new administration has made a couple of announcements. Number one, they're going to increase the weekly supply to states by 16%, 16 over what it was. They also just announced that they'd enter into contracts to purchase another 200 million doses for the country, so that we could get up to the share of population that we want to vaccinate by the summer. Now, the fact that we're getting 200 million doses does not mean they're all coming online right now. In fact, one of the challenges is that the production facilities for Moderna and Pfizer are operating pretty much at capacity now. So in the near term, in addition to the 16% bump that was announced for the federal level supply, the other big factor here is when the Johnson & Johnson vaccine may come online. If it's approved by the FDA, that would be another 100 million doses. That, of course, would help on the federal supply side. So there's the supply piece. The supply piece also includes things like syringes. You probably heard about trying to get the syringes that, don't leave a wasteful, dose behind. And they're talking about using the Defense Production Act to ramp up, those supplies. And then also the issue of continuing to have masks, and N95 masks are really the ones that have proven to be most effective. And there's a shortage of those nationally. And so they're going to be increasing the supply of N95 masks. So that's that on the federal side. On the state side, different states have used different models for distributing the vaccine. And we look forward to working with you to figure out, what the best model is. It's a decision for the state and the local governments. all I know is that the CDC data right now, the Center for Disease Control data, shows that Maryland is 45 out of 50 in terms of the amount of vaccine it's received that it's distributed. And it's distributed in Maryland, as you know, to the county health departments, but also to hospitals and also through pharmacies. And, we're just going to have to, monitor that to make sure that we don't have vaccine, sitting in a bottleneck somewhere. So that's it. The final thing I will say, Madam Chair, before I turn over for questions, is we are working on another round of emergency relief to take us, beyond March and April, which is when a lot of the current relief will run out. And there's a big focus on the issues of vaccine development, deployment, but also other measures to provide additional economic relief and continue that economic relief. So we'll see. We're in the process of, trying to build more consensus on that, but we're also determined to get it done. So let me end there, and happy to try and answer any questions. And again, thank you all for what you've each been doing during this time.
Thank you, Senator Van Hollen. I've changed my screen view. I can see you all. So who has a question? Delegate Krim. Delegate Krim.
I know, I had to unmute. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here, Senator. Really appreciate your time. So I'm a little confused about the vaccines that are going to the private sector, like Giant and Walgreens. Is that a federal government program, or I'll just let you answer that part instead of me explaining more. Just go ahead.
Well, first, thank you, Delegate Grimm. And so the answer is that there are two. The federal government, the previous administration did contract with two private entities. But now the state of Maryland has contracted with two as well, as I understand it. So for example, I think the state contracted with Giant and with Walmart. I think the federal contracts are with Walgreens. And so two of them are state contracts. Two of them were federal contracts originally, but I think we should be focused on this question because there's not a lot of transparency right now into how the vaccines flowing through these vendors are going compared to other data, and we also don't know what the costs are. Know how much is being paid, right? When you send the vaccine to a health department, there's zero additional cost to the taxpayer, and it's very much more transparent. So again, maybe they're working, but there do seem to be some bottlenecks in that area.
So can you get us any data on how much of the federal supply has gone to those private vendors? Can you get us any data?
I will have to follow up through NAN to give you the exact. You're talking about how much of the federal supply has gone through the federal contracts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We can get that. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I saw Delegate Pepe's hand up.
Sure. Senator, thank you for being with us this morning. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this important question. I've heard a lot of issues with the Postal Service here in Maryland. And I'll give you just a very brief example of some of the challenges we have here in Frederick County, your old Congressional District 8. So if I put a letter in the mail to go to my neighbor, that letter has to go to Baltimore to get processed. And apparently there's massive issues in Baltimore with staffing and delays and letters sitting in semi-trucks before it comes back to Frederick. And I'm sure a lot of my colleagues here in the delegation would agree. It's very frustrating. Obviously, it's a federal agency or a federal group. I'm sure you're aware of the problem, but maybe if you could just give us an update on something we're doing to remedy that, because that's been very frustrating, especially around Christmas and then obviously with the election and other areas. So thank you.
Well, thank you for raising this issue. Yeah, we are also tearing our hair out on this issue because it's across Maryland. In fact, it's a national problem right now. And I'm in the process right now of organizing a letter from members of the Senate to the Postal Service to address this issue. We've been talking to them in Maryland. There does seem to be an issue with reduced staffing that's contributing to this and some of the other changes that were put in place by the Postmaster General. So if you can keep supplying us, me, and him with information about bottlenecks, that would be useful because we're trying to get to the bottom of this too. And I think all of us have experienced this. I mean, my wife and I sent some Maryland specialties to, some friends for Christmas, and it took over a month. I mean, we just kept calling that, and it wasn't fair to the Maryland vendor, the Maryland, company, because we kept calling them and they said, look, we put it in the mail, we shipped it. So I'm just describing the problem now that you are too. We are going to work to try to get to the bottom of it. It's especially frustrating because one of the emergency bills we passed converted a $10 billion loan to the post office into a $10 billion, extra grant in December. So we will work with you to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, and I also heard people sending checks to pay bills have delayed. Yeah. And that's even, worse than a Christmas scenario like you and
I'm just telling you.
You can imagine.
My experience. No, in the letter that we are putting together, we are citing situations that you described. We're quoting from, Marylanders who had exactly the experience you're talking about, that they put the checks in the mail for payment. They didn't arrive on time. So then they're being charged late fees. And of course, there are people who rely on the mail for medicine. So it's an unacceptable situation. And then it becomes self-defeating for the post office because then people, stop using the post office to send their delivery. And that's less business for the post office, less revenue. So this could be a downward death spiral if they don't fix it right away.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Delegate Silberti. Unmute yourself. Do you know how to unmute yourself?
Absolutely.
There you are.
I'm Mr. Mute. Here we go. Senator, thanks for being here. You mentioned that we're 45th out of 50. What are your thoughts on, that's obviously not a good place to be, but what are your thoughts on moving us out of that 45 slot? I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No, I think that, and again, this is the CDC data. They're sort of tracking this nationwide, and I think it's a formula where they look at how much, vaccine supply a state has and how much has been, put in people's arms. I do think we need more transparency. We could use, your help too in figuring out exactly what the state mechanism is. I know the governor is proposing now some more mass vaccination sites. That may help. I think the federal government's looking at that too. The challenge, I think, for our local county health departments is that, they develop their plans for distribution. And to the extent that some of that now gets diverted from the state to a different system, then they can't rely on getting it. So I really think that we need to first have more transparency into where all the vaccines are at the state, in the state distribution system, because they go through the county health department, as I understand it, the county health departments, and then hospital systems. And then you have these different pharmacy distribution systems, some that were the federal government did, but two that the state has now done.
Thanks.
But thank you.
Senator Huff.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I just wanted to echo what Delegate Pippi said. We sent a letter, actually, Congressman Trone, and I'll share it with the delegation and your staff. He got a response back about the problems in Maryland with the mail. But I did want to just really emphasize that There seems to be a problem with Maryland specifically. I know I was waiting on a letter. It took 20 days to get to me, and it took 7 days to get to Charleston, West Virginia. So not only that, our mail in Frederick County specifically, it's been a problem for about 5 or 6 years. Now it's far worse, but they closed. We used to process all our mail right in Frederick. Senator Young may remember, I don't know, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, they stopped, they sent it all to Baltimore. So that automatically made a problem. If you're sending a letter from Brunswick, where I live, to Frederick, it's going through Baltimore. But now, you know, it's getting stuck in Baltimore. And I think they had problems. I don't know with COVID or what's going on there, but it's just really bad. We're getting tons of complaints about it. So anything you can do, I just wanted to emphasize that I think it's more than just a national problem, that it's a Maryland problem, but also a Frederick County problem, worse than normal because of the way our mail is routed.
Okay, no, again, I will, I hear you. It's not acceptable. And Senator Cardin and, Congressman Trone and Raskin and I will look not just at the, Senator Cardin at the statewide situation, but also look, specifically at Frederick. And to the extent that we can get, more information about the routing, you're saying that if you put a letter in the mail in Frederick, it goes, even if it's going to it goes to Baltimore automatically first, and then
yeah, we've got a great in downtown Frederick. There's a huge postal facility, and I guess in cutbacks years ago they made the decision to close the huge processing facility there. So when they did that, if you mail a letter from anywhere in Frederick County, it's got to go to Baltimore now first, and it's slowed it down a great deal. And yeah, even in the letter though they sent back, I mean, they talk about COVID and they hired more people. They're keeping them through March, and I'll share it with your staff. They go, our employees rose to the occasion for delivery. No, they didn't. I mean, it's just, we have to be honest with ourselves. So I'll share it with you all.
Yeah, no, that'd be helpful. I mean, I think there are issues we saw in the fall. Some of the processing centers were also closed. I mean, some of the sorting machines were actually taken out. So I think there are a number of pieces to this: sorting machines, staffing, COVID. Anyway, we'll follow up.
Senator Young?
Yeah, I'm not going to drag on with it, but just an example and where a major part of the problem is in Baltimore also. I had a resident in Frederick tell me they mailed a letter to another resident, a Christmas card to another resident in Frederick, and it came back postmarked St. Louis. So evidently Baltimore was having so much trouble, they shipped some of their mail west. So it must have gone from Frederick to Baltimore to St. Louis, back to Frederick. And they said they got it about the 20th of January, and it was a Christmas card.
Well, at least they got it.
Yeah, no, Senator, I hear you. I think, as we said, I think we're all, we're all experiencing this, and as was said, some people it's really, if it's a bill payment and you're getting, charged overtime, overdraft fees and things like that, it's especially harmful, or medicine. But yes, and for all the small business vendors I mentioned, we call them up, we order something, and then they're bearing the brunt of it because but they're not the ones responsible for it. So I hear you loud and clear. We'll accelerate the efforts here.
Thank you. Sounds like it's time to go back to the Pony Express again.
Sounds like the Pony Express, yeah.
I've got one more COVID question for you. There are a number of European countries that have a half a dozen different vaccine suppliers that they're working with. I'm not aware of all of the names, but I know AstraZeneca is one of them. Are you aware of any efforts to add suppliers? Because right now we essentially have two. And to what extent do you think that might actually increase the availability of vaccinations?
So, Madam Chair, the supplier that I know we hope to come online, right? They're in the final stages of clinical trials, and at least anecdotally, all the evidence sounds good, but they have to go through FDA's Johnson & Johnson. And that's 100 million doses. And the other good part about this vaccine is that it's a single dose vaccine. You don't need to do the 2 doses. The other good part about this vaccine is that it doesn't require the sort of deep freeze storage requirements, so that it's easier to transport, store, and that kind of thing. That's the only one that I believe is close to coming online in the United States, right now, because the other ones, to my knowledge, I know AstraZeneca was doing some clinical trials. I did see a report just the other day that that was probably not going to be coming online in the US soon. So, but you just put your finger on the major challenge is to find ways to increase supply. And if there are other, manufacturers out there, I'm sure that the Biden administration is going to try to contract to buy as many as possible. As I said, they just upped the purchase from Moderna and Pfizer by 200 million doses.
Great. Last call for questions. Delegate Cox.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good to see you, Senator. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah.
I wanted to echo just kind of 2 quick things. First of all, about the post office, my own personal experience and interaction with the Baltimore distribution center, and in particular, the priority mail section and for the expediting mail. I had a personal experience with that process where attempting to avoid the craziness, had interactions with an individual to be able to expedite the mail through the priority service, and through paying that extra fee, it still, after almost a week and a half, did not reach literally across the street from the post office. So I had a personal conversation with that department, and the lady in charge there had a lengthy discussion with me about the fact that she was the only one, that everybody else wasn't coming to work, and that I was welcome to come to her office and help her by walking the package across the street. And that kind of, so I told her, I said, look, we'll do whatever we can to help you have more staff. But that's a true story. And it seemed to me she was kind of feeling desperate that she didn't have enough staff in the Baltimore location. So I don't know if that's really the core of this issue, that it's a staffing issue because of COVID. And then to follow up on that, we have a staffing issue obviously with teachers going back to work. And I'm hearing a lot of feedback that Frederick County is not receiving, pardon me, the number of doses for teachers that even counties like Washington County are receiving. And with the upcoming deadlines to go back to school, we want the kids back in school. And you mentioned transparency. What exactly do you think that is needing to be improved with transparency so that we can get to the bottom of that?
Sure. So first of all, I hear you loud and clear on the post office, and that story obviously is very revealing about the problem. So with respect to transparency, what I'm saying is that we don't know exactly. I haven't been able to get clarity on the vaccines that are going through the hospital channels and through the pharmacy channels, exactly how all of that is being administered and how quickly. And this gets to your issue on teachers, because we asked this question, I may have mentioned, but the Maryland congressional delegation had a briefing from the acting Secretary of Health, Dennis Schrader, the other day. And this issue of vaccines for teachers came up. And his answer was that decision is essentially left to the counties as to whether they want to use some of their supply specifically for teachers or or not. And so that was the response we got from the state, that this is ultimately a decision made for the teachers, the state level, that they essentially cleared, use for all sorts of categories. But what we're finding, and you may be finding this in Frederick County and in a number of counties, is that, for example, the county health departments are still, trying to make sure that they get to that first tier of people who are 75 and up. And yet, if you go to your hospital or the pharmacy, maybe they're using it for all different tiers. And so that is creating a lot of confusion among people, because they call the county says, well, here are the criteria, you're only eligible if you're in this category. But then they call the hospital in Frederick and they're applying one of the other categories. So when I say transparency, it would be very helpful to know exactly, for example, what the hospitals are doing in terms of their categories, and same with the pharmacies.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I thought I saw.
You're
Senator
muted.
Young.
Okay. Real quickly, it's not why I had my hand up, but the problem that Senator just brought up is a real one. We found out on the Eastern Shore, some was shipped to a Walmart and they're giving it to anybody that walks in, as opposed to following the tiers. So we're trying to address that locally. But what I just wanted to pass on quickly, and I don't know that the delegation's all seen it yet, but they will shortly, and for the senator's benefit, we passed out of Budget and Taxation Committee yesterday a $520 million relief package for Maryland. It'll go to the floor for first reader today, and I'm sure the leadership has been working together from both houses, and we're looking to get this $520 million out quickly to help Marylanders. And it's going to all aspects, from individuals in need to nonprofits to business to health, education, transportation, and whatever. So we're trying to do our part to fill some gaps until more federal relief comes.
Well, Senator, thank you for that update. I knew you were working on it. I did not realize it had passed yesterday. So congratulations. And yeah, that sounds like a good, robust Maryland relief package. And, as I mentioned, we're working on trying to get another federal package through, because as you all saw, the last quarter economic numbers were not good. The economy took a hit. It looked like in the third quarter of last year things might be improving, but the most recent numbers are very worrisome. So that relief is really important. Thanks.
Well, Senator Van Hollen, thank you so much for joining us today. We've always enjoyed a strong partnership with our congressional delegation, but particularly this year when our challenges are inordinately dependent upon that partnership. We do appreciate your coming on so early in the session and addressing our most critical questions. Thank you. And if we have more, we'll be in touch through Nan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and really thank all of you for what you're all doing. And it's good to partner with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Just a quick note before I sign off, I put my contact information in the chat box for anybody who has a question or didn't get a chance to ask a question. And thank everybody. Thank you all, and have a great day. And I'm going to come back on YouTube.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to go back at least briefly to the Board of Ed vacancy discussion. I see in the chat that Mr. Vogt, am I pronouncing that right? Is it Vogt or Voigt? There you are.
Yeah.
And I think you volunteered to do that mapping exercise between last year's bill and this year's bill to map out for us what changes there are, so that we can get that out to the delegation. They can be aware of it. We can have some conversation because we do want to be able to vote on that bill by next Friday.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. No problem.
Okay, so once we've done that mapping exercise and communicated the differences in the two bills and had an opportunity to have a conversation with the county as well, I think we'd be going through both Ben and let's see, is Joy still on? Yeah, she is. We'll obviously have to have some interim conversation so that we can put that back on next Friday. But before we move on to the next topics, does anyone else have any other recommendations for interim work or questions we have on that bill before it's ready for a final discussion and a vote? Okay, well, it sounds like those two exercises will better position us. Thank you for volunteering to do that. Next, we will move on to the liquor board legislation. We had two items that were tabled last week.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes,
I'm sorry, I couldn't find my button.
unmute fast enough.
Before you move on, I did want to just correct myself. I believe I told you that the bill passed out of the House. And I might have, you might have thought that it was amended. And then there were no amendments made to this bill as you passed it out of the delegation last year to both the House and the Senate. I think I was thinking it had passed the House because we were ready to give testimony in the Senate, but that is not the case. So there are no changes in the Senate version or the House version from last year's bill that appear on the draft that you have for this year's session. So it's the exact same bill that you passed out of delegation.
That happens frequently. A bill passes, you look at it again next year, all of a sudden you have new questions. I have a bill right now passed unanimously on the floor last year, and it's in subcommittee for the second week because all of a sudden new questions are arising on the bill. So it happens. New year, new lens.
Correct. I just wanted to make sure that no one was under the impression it was a different bill.
Okay.
That passed out of your delegation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions before we move on to the two liquor bills that were tabled? I do see that we have Ms. Sugars with us today. And my understanding is you have done some additional research on those bills because there were questions that were brought out. So I'm going to ask you if you would share any updates you have either on research or clarification.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me here today. I appreciate your consideration in the two table bills that we discussed. The first one is the removal of the seating requirement. And I did some, per Senator Huff, he had asked me to check surrounding states and surrounding counties. And every state that surrounds us, just for informational purposes for the delegation, are control states. Maryland is not a control state. Only Montgomery County within us, our state, is the control environment there. So just to give a little background there, and I know Senator Young had voiced some concerns with the seating, lifting the seating requirement for beer, wine, and liquor, and discussed beer and wine. Just to give a little background, Delaware, I went all to the surrounding states, have a 12-seat requirement, with 25% of that being at their bar. Pennsylvania has 30 seats required in all of their counties. Virginia does Costing per seat. So what do I mean by that? Let me break that down. 1 to 100 cost you $560. So you could have 1 seat to 100. Also, then they go a little further to 101 to 200, and it's 100 increments following that for the state of Virginia. West Virginia has no seating requirement, but does have a bathroom requirement and a square footage requirement of 500 square feet. So those are all the surrounding states. And that was per Senator Huff's request. Then I did go a little further and just took samplings, and I tried to be very fair across all the samplings so that Senator Young could see that we do have seating requirements in about 7 of our counties, and then there are no seating requirements in 7 other counties. So I took the sampling up from like 14 different counties. If you'd like me to, I don't know if Senator Young would like me to break down those seatings, or if you guys just want to have a discussion amongst yourselves regarding just the seating requirement in general.
I would like to know which counties don't have a seating requirement, because I'd like to see whether they're problem counties or not.
Okay, sure thing. Let me share with you. Allegheny, their seating requirement just says, in the state law says ample, but they do require 60% food requirement, which is something we require. Anne Arundel says in their state bill, or their state law, sufficient for 2 meals a day for all beer, wine, and liquor, but they also have 51% food requirement. Baltimore is 80% of their square footage must be available for consumption, which we also have in ours. Calvert, no seating requirement, no food requirement. Charles, ample seating, no bar seating is included in that, no food requirement. Howard, no seating requirement, no food requirement. Prince George's, sufficient 2 meals, 51% food requirement. So those are the 7 that I pulled from, and I can certainly, reach out to more, but there are other ones that do have a seating requirement, anywhere from 12 to 50 in your other counties.
I think you said we have a 60% food requirement. I think we have a 40% food requirement.
Sorry, I meant 60% alcohol, 40% food.
40%.
I apologize. I flip-flopped.
That's
those.
okay.
Thank you.
Mistakes are easy.
There's a lot there. I learned a lot through this exercise. I really did. It was very interesting to reach out to the other states, to talk. And I actually reached out and spoke to people, and it was very, very diverse, very, very different all around us. Didn't know if you guys wanted to stop there on that particular one, or do you want me to move on to anything else? Any questions from the delegation?
Okay. Any more questions on this particular item?
I don't have a question,
Senator, yeah.
but I think we've established something good in Frederick that's working. I don't think there's been a big demand for change. We made an accommodation for 1 restaurant last year because every other one in town met the 50 requirement, and we dropped it to 28. And again, I remember the day we had lots of problems with mostly drinking places, and the effect it had on town. And we established a really good food center, and it's working. And I just am reluctant to open that up, which really kind of gets us back to bars again. And I still have that problem. I think we have something working and don't see a big demand to change it.
Any other comment on this bill? Delegate Pepe.
So, in my time with the liquor board, and even now, I mean, we've gone through nearly every regulation, every law. I mean, Ms. Sugars knows. One of the big pushes that we had a few years back, to Senator Young's point, was that we reduced the 50-seat requirement for beer, wine, and liquor to 28. that had been in place for a long time, decades. And I thought that was really important because it actually helped quite a few businesses, not just the one business that Senator Young is referring to downtown that was looking at possibly selling, but also it helps a lot of these small businesses get into these old historic buildings that couldn't meet a 50-seat fire code regulation, which requires more than one egress and a whole bunch of other restrictions. So the other thing we did is we lowered the food ratio, which was it was at what, 51% or something. We dropped it down to 40%, and then there's no ratio after 10 p.m. So, I mean, we really moved the needle further than it had ever been moved in this county in decades. The only concern that I have now, and again, every legislation that I've supported for the alcohol laws is really to help these small businesses. And I think that's really important because they're struggling. But the concern I have was that when this bill was brought forward this year, it was basically, let's drop the 28-seat requirement to match the others. But the others are at 28 as well, and they should be. And I'm not saying that shouldn't be an important conversation down the road, but I'm just wondering, is that so pressing that it has to be done now? I mean, as an example, with the governor's executive orders, people are not even allowed to stand in a restaurant now. So, I don't know why we would be removing tables when, at least during a state of emergency, they're not even permitted to be standing. And I think most of these establishments, they do want some sort of seating. I don't know. So I'm just, when you look at the list of priorities of what to consider and what not, I think the concern I have about the big precedent of removing all tables, and obviously with Mrs. Sugar's research, it looks like we're kind of in the middle. I mean, if you look at all the counties that have seats, some don't, some do. The states, some seats, some do. We're kind of in the middle, and we're moving in the right direction. I mean, this delegation has been more than supportive of these local establishments. And I think even with this other bill we're about to talk about, I think it's a good step forward. So I'm comfortable with, to be honest with you, not dealing with this right now. Because we're still moving forward with a lot of other legislation that helps these small businesses. And I'm just not sure if we're ready to take kind of a big step by just removing all the seats and tables when we're kind of unclear as to the reason we're doing that to begin with, which is we're saying it's to match the other classes, but I think there's some dispute about whether they're at 28 seats or not. So that's just kind of where I am. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen in the future. It just means that at this time, I just don't know if it's the right move. So that's my comments.
Okay, so we can do a few things at this point. We can entertain a motion. First of all, this bill is tabled, so technically to take it off the table, there would have to be a motion to do so. If there is a motion to take it off the table, then we can entertain a motion to either move forward or not. So you've got some options there.
I would move we just table it indefinitely for a future look.
Is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we will table that indefinitely.
I just want to thank you for doing the research for that. I appreciate it. And it was
Yes.
work, but sometimes we can learn a lot by what the others are doing. So just thank you for getting that back to me.
I appreciate it too.
Thank
You're
you.
very welcome. It was a good learning experience for us as well. Thank you for allowing me that opportunity to do that.
Well, we're going to allow you that opportunity one more time as we move on to the other bill that was tabled, the on-premise consumption. Did you have any more comments you wanted to make about that?
I just wanted to add that I have been working very closely with the bill drafter on this, and with the tasting permit that would be added additional, we did cap out, and I'd like Delegate Pippi and I had a conversation, and he put it into some good perspective. So if I could call on him to add to what we added to this and what we actually added some restraints and a little bit stricter we put some things around it that would restrict some of that consumption, but he put it in perspective a little bit better. And I'd like to call on him to add to that, if I could, Delegate Pippi.
Sure. So
That's fine.
right now, just to put things in perspective, all of our Class A establishments, which are liquor stores, have the ability to offer tastings to customers that come in. So for example, you go in, you want to buy some beer, they actually have the ability, if they have a tasting permit, to let you try some beer up to a certain point. And it's the same for beer, wine, and liquor, which is good, right? But what they're not permitted to do is they're not permitted to charge a fee for it. So look, I mean, I think this is an opportunity for our Class A businesses to make some money, to offer a better experience. The limits of alcohol consumption are already set, so this bill would not increase those limits for anyone concerned about turning a Class A into a bar. But what it would do is it would allow a Class A establishment to, let's say, offer a flight of some craft beers that someone could taste before making a decision to make a purchase. And I think it's a great idea. And I think our Class A establishments would appreciate it because they have an opportunity maybe to generate some more revenue, to also appeal to more customers. And so just as far as the public safety concern, there's no increase in consumption. The limits wouldn't change. The amount served would be 3 half ounces of liquor for liquor sales. I think it would be 6 half ounces for beer sales. So like a flight of 6 beers, or is it two ounces?
Okay, I'm sorry. It's going to be a total of what's in the bill, and it matches St. Mary's and Howard.
Okay.
Is a total of 12 for beer, 6 for wine.
6 for wine. Okay.
And then to add a little bit further, for the liquor, we would allow them to mix it with a little bit of juice. And again, very small quantities restricted.
Sure.
Thank you.
So
Jessica.
I mean, to me, you know, and again, I'm one of 8 votes here, but I thought that was a good compromise because again, it doesn't increase the consumption limits. It offers our Class A establishments an opportunity to kind of diversify and make some more money. They're already permitted to allow consumption on site. So I'm going to support this bill. I think this is a good pro-business bill. So thanks.
Senator Young.
I'm agreeable. I would like to make sure the 12 ounces of beer has to be a flight too. They just can't come in and drink a beer. Is that correct?
You're muted.
Sorry. The mute button, I tell you. Yes,
know.
it would be restricted to 12 ounces and it would be written out specifically in a regulation as well.
But my question is, the 12 ounces has to be a sample of several beers, not just come in and have a beer.
Exactly. It's 1 ounce from each brand up to 3 ounces. So it's specific.
Okay, I'm good with that.
And
Any
thank
other
you, Jesse, I wanted to thank Delegate Pippi for having that conversation with me to look at those as well. Thank you.
Yes, this was a good conversation, very clarifying. Any other comments? Okay. I will repeat from the last procedure.
I move
We have to-
approval.
Okay, we need to first take it off the table. A motion to take it off the table?
So moved.
Second,
Second? Okay, now is there a motion on the bill?
favorable.
Second.
All those, I need to repeat the motion. There is a move and a second to approve the on-premise consumption for Class A. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, so that is 7-0 because Delegate Krim had to leave. Okay, thank you, Ms. Sugars. That was a lot of help. I know that up until the last minute, we all had questions on those 2 bills, but I really think your
The
presentation
Ferguson thing
today
is Zoom.
helped
Yes.
clarify it.
And I appreciate the delegation's openness and able to have this
Yes.
discussion. And I'll look forward to the bills that are drafted, and then we'll wrap those with regulations as well.
Before we move on to the final topic today, I just wanted to share with everyone that I have asked Delegate Pippi, and he has graciously responded to present these bills on the House side. He is a liquor expert, and on the House side. And also,
Agreed.
he sits on the committee. So I think it's important when we have the expertise within our delegation to go with that expertise. So thank you for your willingness to present these bills. Okay, moving on to our final topic, which is new business. And it is Senator Huff has two bills he would like to present. And I do believe for one of his bills, we have some testifiers in the waiting room. So when we get to that bill, I'm going to ask Josh if he would admit those testifiers into the main Zoom room. Senator Huff, the screen is yours.
Well, thank you. And I'll try to be quick on these. I actually have another meeting coming up at 11. So the first one is the town of Emmitsburg approached me about introducing legislation to offer small businesses a tax credit. Well, they want to offer small businesses a tax credit when they move into the town. Under the Maryland Constitution, we can't pass legislation for one municipality, so I can't do a bill just for Emmitsburg. So we had to draft it for all municipalities. It's enabling legislation to offer a property tax credit to any new or expanding business on top of what the county offers. So this is just for the municipalities in Frederick. And the language is actually going to be to encourage the location and development of business operations and expansion of the employment base of Frederick County. The governing board of Frederick County and a municipal corporation in Frederick County may grant by law a property tax credit against the county municipal corporate property tax imposed on any property owned or leased by a new or expanding business. So that's the summary of that. I'm waiting. I've not gotten it back. Hopefully I'll get it back like this week. Happy to take any questions on it, but it's from the town of Emmitsburg. Yes, Senator.
I think we can allow them to give a town tax credit on their property tax rate, but I don't think we can override the county tax credit. That's still, I believe, a county decision. But I'm certainly agreeable to giving them the right to give the town tax credit.
Yeah, that's my understanding. It's just for the town, for them to do it.
Just for the town.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's just for the town tax credit.
Yeah, and I'll clarify
That's
that. I
fine.
know we're just discussing these today, so we're going to vote on them next week, but I'll clarify because, yeah, the town of Emmitsburg couldn't vote to do a county tax credit.
And Mike, if I could mention, I had that bill last year, and I was told that if you make it too specific to Emmitsburg, it's also unable to be done. It has to be broad enough for other municipalities, and so that's why I kind of got held up last year, I think, on my end.
Actually, I think they can do it now, but this bill would clarify that they can do it. So I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I'm looking right now too. It's the same thing as what Charles County does. So, so that's where we got the legislation from, is we just borrowed it from Charles. And I don't think we have anybody on the House. So if the delegation goes forward with it, then maybe Delegate Cox, you can carry it on the House side, or however you guys do it. I think you do it as delegation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if it passes, I'm fine with allowing passing it on to Delegate Cox. I have a question for you. As soon as you get that back from drafting, would you share it not only with the delegation, but with the county and the municipalities, since obviously it might affect all municipalities?
Yeah.
I'd like to at least give them a heads up.
Yeah,
Since,
we'll go ahead and share the language today with the county and the municipality so that next week we can vote on it and, see if there's any problems.
It is just enabling legislation, so it doesn't affect any other town unless they want it to.
good point.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, this week, unlike other weeks, we're just going to have to do a lot of back and forth during the week because if we want to get it dropped, we've got to vote on it next Friday. Any other questions on this item? If not, let's move on to your second item.
Okay, so the second item is all of you are aware that last year we approved sports gambling, or the voters approved it in the Constitution. And obviously we voted for it first and the voters approved it, but we were not specific about the licenses. There was a lot of back and forth. Last year, the discussion was, I know at least on the Senate side, it was the casinos wanted it. And then there was a push from the casinos to block out others. And the idea was, well, the last iteration of what at least the Senate was moving was casinos. There were some sports stadiums going to get it. And then the off-track betting were the only other ones that were basically in that realm of getting it. Now, I've always been a proponent of the off-track because that is the only way that we would end up with it in Frederick County as being currently talked about because they obviously handle gambling now. They handle sports wagering through horses. So discussion was giving it to them. And if we don't end up with off-track betting facilities getting it, then Frederick County is just totally left out. You know, our people are just going to keep driving to Charlestown and DC and other places to gamble, which are much closer than going to the Horseshoe in Baltimore or going out to Rocky Gap. So legislation was introduced. There's a couple things going on. In the Senate, Zucker has it, and I know in the House, I know there's ways and means to work on something. There's going to be an overall licensing bill going forward about who has it and who doesn't. There's legislation being introduced in the Senate. For example, Chris West has it in Baltimore to give it to their off-track betting facility in Baltimore. So I drafted up legislation so that asking that we get a license for sports betting for our off-track betting facility in Frederick County. And that's essentially what the legislation does in its totality.
Are there questions? Senator Young.
Yeah. I want to make sure we have it too. And I would hope that we put in the statewide bill, if we went off track, to have it that just casinos, stadiums, and off track can have it statewide. But then I would hope somewhere along the way, because I know there's a push from the minority communities that they're going to be shut out again, that there be some provision for some minority group, you know, within the county to have it also. But I would rather see it in a statewide bill that all off-track betting is permitted than trying to do that locally every place.
Yeah, if I could just answer. So I think I want us to stake out a position that I think the first thing to start with is supporting it for off-track, because quite frankly, that almost got lost last year in the shuffle. The casinos want to just keep it all for themselves. That's their position. So to even get off-track, we got to fight for that. This bill I'm talking about can only pass if Zucker's bill passed. When the Senate, the Zucker bill, our statewide bill passes, this would have to go through with it. I mean, I'm not opposed to other places, but right now the conversations are on off track because they already deal with it. I don't want to certainly exclude anybody else, but I just want to make sure that I think our best chance of getting it is at an off track. And if we don't get that, I worry we get nothing.
Well, I'll make the minority argument on the total bill when that comes. I think it's going to be made whether I make it or not. But
there's others. I mean, I share. I mean, we got an American Legion in Brunswick too. There's, the military organizations, and I'm not necessarily opposed to them, but I just remember what Galen Claggett said: "If you're not at the table, you're on the menu." Kind of reminds you of this argument.
Delegate Kerr has a question.
Yes, Madam Chair, was this the bill where we had witnesses we needed to let into the room?
We do, but I think there are a few more questions for Senator Huff before we do that. I know I have some. I just like to try to let the members of the delegation go first.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then I'll ask mine, because I'm kind of confused about how this works. Is there only one license allowed per county?
So we don't know right now how they're going to set it up. But if you look at what was being discussed last year, was that they were just going to do not even one per county. They were just going to do the casinos, potentially off tracks, and some sports betting. So if they went under a scenario, let's say they just do the casinos and some sports stadiums, and the sports stadiums were not minor league stadiums. They were talking about the Washington football team stadium, the Orioles, major league teams. Then if that scenario happened, we'd be totally left out. And that's why I wanted to, bring this conversation up, because, I think it's important that Frederick County have an entity in here, and the only one that logically is being talked about is the off-track betting facility.
Okay, I wasn't sure how it worked, and I wanted to make sure that if we move forward on this, that it is a fair, a transparent, and a competitive, open process.
Yeah, and look, and there's no doubt that the legislation names the specific entity, the company, because they're the one that hold the off-track betting license, and so, they're the licensee.
Okay, Delegate Pepe has his hand up.
So with the casinos, just in general, I mean, obviously, there was a big law passed, or I guess a referendum in 2012 for casinos. It's unique in that they actually have to list the names of the entities, right? I mean, they don't, when you pass like anything related to gambling, those big casinos, are they specifically listed in those bills, like the MGM Graham and Prince George's County? Is that, I mean, unlike other industries where you say there's a license in a county for these types of things because they don't want them all over the place, is that typically, maybe Senator Huff, you could answer that. I'm not really sure. That's why I'm asking.
Well, it's unique in this case in that in the past when we did gambling, we specified the exact locations where the casinos would be. We're in a different realm now because we have people who are licensed to gamble. So it's a little bit different. So now we're operating in a realm where we have licensed gaming, in that we have MGM and we have these entities that are operating. We have the off tracks. So I got to believe when you do it this time, we're going at the people who are the licensed gaming folks. Obviously the casinos are going to be in this legislation. So, and however license they give, I mean, it's not going to be an infinite number of license.
Well, and that's what I mean. I mean, I don't, right. It's going to be a finite number. I'm assuming in any way they do it, it doesn't.
And the legislation actually would give it to the casinos. Oh, yes, the actual casino will get it.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to say is kind of like with those marijuana dispensary, the medical marijuana, where they specifically name an entity in the legislation. Is that right? Am I saying that right? So, okay, all right, thanks.
Delegate Kirk.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Huff, do you know how many OTBs there are in the state?
I'm not familiar offhand. There's not many. There's
Yeah, it makes more sense to me that the OTBs would be included rather than the sports stadiums where the games are actually played, and where like the Raven Stadium is only open eight dates a year. It just doesn't make much sense to me that would be a preferred locale rather than the OTBs. But as Senator Young was saying, it would make more sense to me just to include all the OTBs rather than trying to have each individual OTB request to be included. But
I'm sure there'll be a statewide bill. And to be honest, I think us doing this bill, I don't necessarily foresee this bill necessarily passing. I just want us to be there saying, hey, we want our OTB to be included in what is being discussed, is more than anything, because this bill, the state bill has to pass before this one. To be honest, us taking this position, I think just helps put support of us being in the state bill and our Frederick OTB being in the state bill that Senator Zucker's working on in the Senate. I'm not sure in the House. I think it may be Delegate Barnes, but I'm not exactly sure.
Probably someone on Ways and Means. Any further questions for Senator Huff? Okay, Josh, I think we have someone in the waiting room that would like to testify on this bill.
And I apologize. I got to jump on a call with the Senate President, but I'll have, if it's okay, Stephen's just going to sit in and monitor for me. I think you've got, by the way, on my previous bill, I think you got Mayor Briggs joining us right now too.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Briggs, I see you. Would you like to offer any comments on the previous bill? Oh, I also see you're connecting to audio, so you may not be prepared to do that yet. If you all can be patient for just another minute, okay, whoever comes in first will get to testify on one of the two bills we just said. I'm going to assume RLC 4444 is testifying on the sports betting bill.
No, I'm with the small business tax credit.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, I just want to thank you all. It's so good to see you. Happy New Year. And I want to tell you my experience with getting the vaccination. Everything the Frederick County Health Department did was terrific. It went as smooth as silk. People were moving through lines, and on our end, we're doing it very well. Thank you all. It's good to see you. I want to thank Senator Huff for his leadership on getting us $1 million in for a clarifier for wastewater treatment plant, and the support of the delegation for that too. This legislation is really important to us because we have a downtown that's historic district, and it's just been won an award as one of the top 10 most beautiful small towns in the state of Maryland, and we're honored to have that, and we feel like this will help our downtown. But I feel the support you have is already there. It's offered by the county. We just want the opportunity for the municipality, the town of Emmitsburg, to do the same thing with the credit. The county has gone ahead and said they would do the accounting, administrating, and handle the tax bills. And we're kind of just proposing 40% the first year and second year, and 30% the third and fourth year, is 20% the fifth and sixth, and 0 after that. It's endorsed by our Emmitsburg Business and Professional Association, and we have one example up here. We have a family child care that's grown, and they bought a building here that was in desperate repair, and they're putting $300,000 into the building, and so it'll be a new facility, 6 full-time employees, and they will have the county and the town's tax credit for taxes, but we're really excited about that. But again, if you have any questions, but we're really excited about offering this. So many wonderful things are happening in our county, and also even in the face of this COVID pandemic. But we're here, and we've got a town that's growing, and we're really happy with what we have here. Thank you. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Anyone have any questions for Mayor Briggs, Senator Huff? I mean, Senator Young.
Just a quick comment to the mayor. I think under law, you can actually do it now, but I'm very supportive of the bill to clarify that, so that if there's any doubt, you can do it.
Thank you, Mayor. Still call you Mayor?
You can call me anything you want.
Thank you.
Which I do. Thank you. Delegate Cox.
Oh, Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Good to see you. And just wanted to congratulate you on your reelection and let you know that we're fully behind this bill. I know worked on this last year, and I'm talking with Senator Huff about moving that forward. So thanks for all you're doing here in Emmitsburg.
Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Delegate Soliberti.
Yes, I regret to inform you that I have an ENT meeting in progress, so I'm going to have to leave you wonderful people.
Understood.
Okay,
We're
take care.
we're very close to concluding anyway. Mick Briggs, just want to let you know, we will be voting on this bill next week. The only reason we're not voting today is we like to give both the delegation and the public a week's notice on a bill so that we're very transparent. People can have their questions answered before we officially move forward.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
See you.
Okay.
Okay, I believe we have one more witness, and this would be on the sports betting bill. So Josh, if you could unmute RLC 4444.
Delegate Young.
Yes.
Senator Young. This is Randy Cohen. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd be happy to show you my face. However, I've gone through double surgery. I've had a hip replaced, a knee replaced. I've been in quarantine for off and on since mid-October. I look homeless. However, if you want to see me, I can do that. It's your call. You know what I look like.
Yeah, you don't have to physically appear to testify. That's fine.
Okay, I'm hoping. I actually ordered a titanium trimmer before I went in the second round, and I have yet to get it. So I too am available for questions on sports betting. I sent Senator Huff a long list of attributes for having sports betting at long shots in Frederick. We already have an affiliation with off-track betting with the Maryland Jockey Club. We're requesting a standalone license, so we're not under their control. We think that Frederick County deserves to have Frederick County should have sports betting. When I'll give you an example, before Charlestown reopened, we were getting a good crowd. And as soon as Charlestown opened and they allowed college football to be bet on, our attendance went away by at least 50%. Losing that much activity in the state of Maryland is harmful. We have and will continue to create on-site and off-site jobs. The very key thing to our location in Frederick is that it's 70% woman business entity. We applied for it with MDOT in the state. It's still pending the application. It takes, 3 times longer due to the pandemic to get approved. But will be the only true minority entity that I'm aware of that will be applying for a license in the state. We have no residences around us, so we can't affect anything like that. The hospitality business, including ours, has been just completely shredded. We have spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep our businesses open. We've still continued to spend money to improve the properties. We've brought a brand new, stunning Spring Hill Suites by Marriott to the city of Frederick without any stipends at our own expense. We should open there in 3.5, 4 weeks. Should be pretty cool with a rooftop bar and patio. Very nice. But for this location, it's just been one struggle after the next, especially where we had to close the restaurant and the off-track betting for more than 3 months. This kind of concession, sports betting would help bring it back, and we would have an opportunity to completely replace the hotel if we were able to be put in that position. I see it nothing but a win-win-win. Long ago, when we it was reported in the Frederick News Post that the conference center deal was dead in downtown. We stepped up. We bought this conference center so we wouldn't lose the opportunity in Frederick. Obviously, things went sideways after that, but we still have the same approach. We want to maintain the ability to have a conference center in Frederick, and this would be a help to not only the state, the county, and the area, but a big positive again for jobs and both on and off site and so forth. I feel as though we've covered every base you can possibly cover. We've renovated the conference center again with our own money. The banks just won't lend us anymore because we're in the hotel business. So the conversation with myself and my wife and my daughter sometimes isn't always so pleasant. But we still did it. We stepped up, and we'd be thrilled to show you around. We'd like this to be the community conference center, not just for one isolated group, and that's about it. I'm available for questions, and I know you guys are working hard under unbelievably tough conditions. It's just unbearable what we're trying to do, and for you guys to get around in a business that you're in to communicate so much. It must be like playing checkers.
Mr. Cohn, thank you very much for your testimony. Any members of the delegation have any questions for Mr. Cohn? Okay, seeing none, we did have several questions for Senator Huff today. Unfortunately, we do not have a member of either Ways and Means or Finance in our delegation. These are the two committees within the Maryland General Assembly that has the expertise in this area. So we will be attempting to get many of our questions that weren't answered today answered during the next week, so that we can bring this up for a vote a week from today. Certainly the state would like to see the additional revenue that this would generate, and we all would like to see the local business opportunity. Delegate Krim has just reconnected, so I will give her the opportunity. She had to go to a voting session in appropriations. So let me bring you up to date. Senator Huff just presented the sports betting bill, and Randy Cohn just presented why and how this would benefit not only local business, but the general community. And so I just opened it up for questions for Mr. Cohn, although the committee does have some questions that we will be seeking to get answers to during the next week from specialists on this topic. I think you're still muted.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would agree with that assessment, and I support sports betting. I voted for the amendment that we had on the ballot. So I'm interested to know how all this will work, but I think we have to have that discussion in the General Assembly also. You know, we need to check in with Ways and Means. We need to check in with city, county leaders to see how all this is going to move forward. But generally, I do support sports betting.
And as Senator Huff pointed out, if I understood this correctly, essentially Senator Zucker's bill would have to pass first to prepare the avenue for this particular bill. But by moving this bill forward, we get Frederick's voice at the table. If I understood that correctly.
You mean do a bill before the General Assembly does?
Yes, apparently Senator Zucker does. I can't speak to the specifics, Senator Huff speaking to it, but perhaps we can get a copy of that. I think that's on our to-do list, because if there's going to be an opportunity for us to vote on this a week from today, we have more homework to do.
And how about county? I know that this location is not in the city.
Right.
But how about county input here on this? Should we have that? Should we have public comment? I mean, how are we going to do that? I'm just putting these things out there. I don't know.
Well, we were able to get the public comment session open today. It was a little late, but at least it was open by the time we discussed things that we were going to vote on. So we will go back and look and see if there's any comments in the public comment section, and we'll share them. You're muted again.
Okay, I just have one concern specifically to the location. And a couple years ago, when we were discussing the sports betting at that location, and I don't know what this bill does, but I don't have any problem with sports betting at that location, but I did have a problem with signage that the owner of the business wanted to put on I-270. The reason I had that is that we get a lot of traffic, people coming into Frederick County. That is the first thing they're going to see when they enter into Frederick County is a big sign, if that is what is going to happen here. And I would oppose a big sign on I-270 at the facility. So I don't know if there's some way we can put that in the bill language at this point, but that really concerns me. I don't want people's first impression of Frederick County to be sports betting. I don't mind having it there. I don't want that.
May I say something?
The bill doesn't address that now.
But can I tell you something good?
Yes.
Delegate Krim, you asked me to put up a good looking sign. I have good news for you. It's been up for a year. And it has the hotel, and it has a small message board sign. We did it with discretion. Clearly, no one's objected. And that was specifically for your request. We did it with, again, with you in mind. And it says long shots, it says barbecue, bedding, beer. It shows who the events are. You know, whatever else is pertinent for that day or week. It's done with good taste, as I promised you I would.
Okay. I appreciate that. Now, I haven't been out to see it because I really haven't gone anywhere hardly with the pandemic. So, but I'll make a point to go out there and look at the sign. So let me do that and we can discuss it more. There's no sense me talking about it until I see the sign.
No problem. It's with pleasure that I have given you our list of attributes, and again, we're from Frederick. We'll stay in Frederick. We are for Frederick. We always have been. And that's what we're all about. So we're here for a win-win for everybody, and including the sign. And I will repeat one very important thing. If we are able to get this, we envision being able to replace the entire hotel, which would be stunning for our community.
Okay, I'm going to have to cut off this conversation here. We are approaching the 2-hour mark. And that is the max we want to hold these meetings for. So a few concluding words. I apologize for the technical difficulties we experienced today. Unfortunately, we had a last-minute emergency, but we did get a lot done. Nevertheless, we will try to work them out prior to next week. Another comment, we do have both Congressman Trone and Senator Cardin coming on next week. We will try to change their schedules so that we can do the voting first. I will work with that. And then going forward, typically we don't have these meetings much beyond the time that our voting is concluded. However, all of the members of our federal delegation have expressed interest in speaking with us. And given the necessity of a strong partnership, particularly now, we will try to accommodate them. Also, we want to stay very up to date on what's happening with vaccine distribution. So after we complete our voting next week. Oh, there is one other topic we have on our agenda. I have asked Rick Weldon to coordinate a presentation on the status of our business community. We really need to understand their issues and challenges in general, and particularly during this pandemic, so that when we see state issues coming to a vote, we have that local lens in front of us. We are scheduling that for February 12th because Rick wasn't able to coordinate his team, which represents many aspects of the business community until then. So after February 12th, we'll be very much on an as-needed basis. Any other comments or questions prior to conclusion? Unfortunately, the public comment was turned off, I'm seeing in the chat, but this meeting has been recorded, so we will look into taking the recording from Zoom and posting it on the YouTube platform. Final comments?
Move for
Anyone?
adjournment.
Pardon me?
Move for adjournment.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, moved and approved. See you next week at this time and place. Have a good